On this episode of the Haunted Objects Podcast.
Hey everybody, we are currently crisscrossing the country on our nationwide speaking tour, Haunted Objects Live. So come out and see us, newkirktour.com, if you want to help us haunt some objects. But in the meantime, we didn't want to leave you hanging for 2 months, so we have a very special surprise for you. Consider it a bonus episode. This was a live special. It only ever aired once, just to museum members. It's a celebration of our film, The Unbinding. If you haven't seen our film, The Unbinding, yet, now's a great time because it is officially streaming for free on Tubi today. Perfect for spooky season. You have no excuse not to see it. This episode is a little peek behind the scenes on what it took to make this movie, some stories from the making of it, interviews with people who were part of it, and some tidbits that you might find real interesting once you watch the film. We will be back from tour in November, and the season will continue then. But until then, enjoy the special. Come see us on the road, newkirktour.com. We'll see you in your town soon.
From deep inside the mysterious archives of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal, it's the Haunted Objects Podcast.
Can you believe it? We're doing a live show.
Whoa.
How's it feel?
It feels great. It feels great.
We do live streams all the time. If you're a brand new museum member,
Yes.
We do this stuff all the time. This is a little different, though, because we're following the format of the podcast.
We are.
And we have a very special topic today. The subject of the documentary we have coming out is what made the most dramatic change in how I approach these things and how I talk about these things, most of all. Because I think that we have found these days that, yeah, we're paranormal researchers, but the way that most people know us is not really as paranormal researchers, it's as storytellers.
Yeah.
And there is a responsibility in the way that we tell story and the way that we share story.
There's so many experiences, there's so many stories, there's so much folklore. I love being part of that, and I like being a caretaker of that. And as the years go by, I think I have more appreciation for what we do, and I take it more seriously, and I change, and it genuinely changes me as a person.
Stories are kind of our thing. We have a lot of outlets to tell stories. We tell stories with television shows. We tell stories with blogs. This podcast is a way that we tell stories.
Yeah.
But we're doing something we've never done before, and that is we're releasing a feature-length documentary film. And we have the director of that film in studio.
Oh,
everybody say hi to Karl.
Hi, Karl. What's up, everybody? Hey,
how are you?
Connor, surprise. Sorry.
We'll have Connor. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
Connor will be here. Karl, do you remember the first time that you heard about the Crone?
We met at the Stanley 2016, and then we were just kind of internet friends for like a year and a half before we shot Hellier, and we hung out really for more than just like an evening. But I do remember the first night when we were came out to shoot Hellier, we were just telling stories for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And the Crone might have been part of that in there, but I do have a memory of that same week, Greg kind of showing Connor the wall of the office and all the haunted objects and stuff. And I remember something to do with this moment of just like, you know, it's in that box right there. And Connor was like, yeah. Like, I think you offered, you were like, do you want to see it? And he was like, not really.
Well, listen, we should give everybody the traditional introduction
Yes, we have
to the podcast. It always starts with a bit of Karl's beautiful footage.
Oh my gosh, strap in.
And a familiar voice that we call the disembodied voice. So let's introduce everybody to the Crone.
In the shadowy heart of the rural New York forests lies a dark secret, untold until now. In 2015, while hiking off the beaten path in the Catskill Mountains, two hikers made a startling discovery. Tucked away in a small cave sat an old wooden carving caked in dirt. 3 rusty nails protruded from each of its eye sockets, and a weathered stretch of rope was bound tightly around the statue's neck. There was no doubt in either of the men's minds that this was witchcraft. Despite the figure's stark visage, the hikers took their discovery home with them. Immediately, frightening paranormal phenomena began to manifest around the artifact. As the familiar scent of an earthy, stagnant swamp permeated the home, the carving appeared to move from room to room on its own accord. Soon, mysterious trails of wet footprints paced the kitchen, and waves of anxiety gripped the men's minds. One evening, the men were paralyzed by fear when an uninvited guest made herself at home. Hunched in the corner of the living room, the unmistakable frame of an old woman appeared to manifest from the shadows. Her piercing eyes shined like embers in the darkness as she rose to a standing position. But just as quickly as the crone had appeared, she was gone. The figure was immediately wrapped in an old pillowcase and mailed to the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal, where a 5-year investigation of the artifact would result in the Unbinding, a new feature-length documentary that will forever change the way you think about ghosts. Have Greg and Dana successfully unlocked the secrets of the Crone? Join us as we delve into the dark recesses of this chilling Appalachian mystery, hoping to discover answers where others have only encountered darkness. Beware the curse of the Catskills Crone.
And now, time to dive into the Crone, the
Tis.
curse of the Catskills Crone.
Here we go.
We've been working on this thing for so goddamn long.
As Karl said, how many years?
It's been like 4.5 years, I think.
Ooh.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
All right.
Nightmare mode. How is this? Let's talk a little bit about, because there's a lot of people who only really know us from Hellier when it comes to the projects that we put out. How is this different from Hellier, Karl?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that this is a feature-length documentary. So this is coming in around an hour and a half, a little bit longer than that. And it's got that beginning, middle, and end that we hope to God Hellier will one day have. The writers are kind.
Please.
Please. I like storytelling too much to leave it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see on that one. But yeah, this one, it's much more self-contained. The story of the Crone was always one that had that structure to it, especially as things shaped up in the direction that it wound up going. Like Hellier, though, the more you dig into something and the more you live with it, the more weird twists and turns come up. So I think it will certainly scratch that Hellier itch that a lot of people have in terms of the way strange things always seem to get a little bit stranger the more time you spend with them. So it's got a lot of that flavor to it, and it feels like very much, because it's all of the same crew and you guys at heart, it's a spiritual successor to Hellier. But it's as bite-sized as a feature-length documentary can be. It's a little bit more bite-sized than Hellier.
What was it about this that made you go? Because I remember very early on, what originated this idea to do this documentary was originally, it was sort of, we were going to do a proto podcast where we were going to do little like half-hour vignettes about the different objects in the museum, and we started with the Crone. And I remember Karl going, I don't know, man, I think this deserves a little more attention than just a half-hour thing. What was it in your head that made you go, we need to flesh this thing out and turn this into a real project?
I mean, like, it was fairly instantaneous. And it's funny you say proto podcast, because I was thinking about it earlier today, and that's exactly what it was. It was just like wanting to like reinvent your YouTube channel with like little like 30-minute segments about the objects. And it was probably, as we finished up Greg's first interview of it, which at that point it was for YouTube. So I was just doing like a single camera kind of shot. It wasn't like a big documentary 2 or 3 camera interview. And it took about an hour and a half or longer to do that interview. And as soon as we wrapped it up, I was like, this can't be a 30-minute thing, because like it not only was the story too good to have to cut elements out of it, like it would have lost something, I think, to try to get it down to 30 minutes, but you also just like I could feel that beginning, middle, and end, where I was like, this is just a really, really great story that we have here. And I think it would fit really nicely. And it would be nice to try to constrain ourselves to that feature length project and like give ourselves some of the constraints that come with that, where Hellier is so much more free form. We can go with the flow, however many episodes it needs a season. And this one was like, let's try to put an end cap on something. And it was just very obvious the moment that we finished that. And then I spent, I think, the next 1.5 or 2.5 years using that, the interviews I shot with you and Dana and Tyler, as my baseline for the documentary, knowing full well that we would have to reshoot.
Yeah.
Karl also found out that we're not the greatest at doing recreations.
Yes.
If you guys watch the podcast every week, you'll know we're not really the best actors.
No, I think we're terrible. What you're trying to say is we're terrible.
We're pretty
actors.
bad.
We're terrible. I think you might be a little bit better than me, but I still think we both suck.
Dude, when we saw like the first round of like recreation scenes that we did, I remember calling Karl, and I was like, Karl, is there a way that we can like just like shoot these up close and in slow motion where you just can't see our faces? We don't have to like do anything.
Yes.
And you know what?
It works so much better.
So good.
Yeah.
It worked so good. The footage in this, it looks so good. And I don't feel like I'm distracting because I look like I'm acting.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
It's pretty cringy watching yourself act when you can't.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a lot of elements too, because like the whole thing, I look back on it too, and like there's some cool shots in there looking back at the footage that I didn't give myself much credit for, but it was just, I knew stuff about lighting at the time and whatnot too, but it's just like I didn't really apply that much of it. And so it just didn't look super professional either, which I think doesn't help. And I think the one thing I was drawing a lot of inspiration from, the documentary series that I was watching, had more scripted recreations and less of the slow-mo dreamy type stuff. And I think I was trying to do that, even though, you know, with non-actors, the wheelhouse is a little bit more like slow motion.
Sorry, Karl.
Kind of give yourself a little bit of forgiving on like that.
Sarah wants to know how long it took you to finally show us like the final cut. Because you're not too bad about that, really. And we never pry. I would rather have Karl do his thing and feel comfortable, because Karl's great. Because when Karl's excited, when he's got something, he's really excited. That was how you know he's ready to show you.
Yeah, and you're pretty generous with it too. Like you're like, I want to show this to you. I want to get feedback. Like, and I love that. I love that.
Yeah, too generous, I think, because I think the fault is that it's not that I hold it back from you guys for too long. It's that I probably show it too rough.
Oh,
that
interesting.
It loses its impact sometimes. You know,
that's interesting.
Like, I don't think I think it's a poorly kept secret that we've shot some of Hellier season 3 over the years. And, you know, I've shown you guys some clips of that. And it's like, it's cool. It's cool to see it start to become real and get that glimpse of what it's going to look like for us as well. But some of that momentousness of like seeing it when it's all done and polished, you kind of lose that a little bit. And then when it finally is time to watch that finished one, you've kind of already seen half of it before. So you guys are as much involved in that creative process along with me that I know it's not so much of a thing, but I try to be very, very closed off about that stuff when it comes to like, you know, my girlfriend at home watching stuff together, because I want her to have like the best experience,
of course.
She can. And so the Unbinding, even she waited this entire time before she got to see it. She only got to see it like 3 months ago, maybe 2 months ago.
That's crazy.
Because she just didn't want to see it half finished and then watch it 16 times to see my slight music changes or whatever I'm doing to polish up the final thing.
Well, we'll talk to Karl a little bit more about the documentary itself before we show the trailer at the end here. But what we wanted to do for everybody is, because we're so near people finally seeing the Unbinding, we wanted to give basically the stage presentation, the lecture that we normally give about the Unbinding to you guys for the last time. So that's really what this episode is going to revolve around. We have a few special guests we're going to bring in to help us talk about some of the points in this presentation. This is really the last time we're ever going to talk about this way, because now we're about ready to release a project that says everything that we need to about this thing.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like the Unbinding is saying something and closing the door on our way out.
Yeah.
I really get that feeling like it's the end of a chapter for us, for the museum, for this item, and for a lot of people who have had interactions with this item. There's a lot of reveals in this that we're not going to tell you about tonight. We want you to still see the movie.
Yeah.
We're going to give you half of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to feel like a complete story when we give it to you. But I promise you, the things that are in the documentary are things that are mind-blowing. And that really is what kind of gives it a little bit of that hellier flavor, is some of the stuff that happens when we least expect it that really shows us what's really going on with the Crone.
Yes, yeah.
I think people are going to be flabbergasted when they see it.
Mm-hmm.
A wave of the wand, a roll of the dice, and never the same trick twice at Mr. Trickster's Magic Emporium.
Do you need a little magic in your life? Come to Mr. Trickster's Magic Emporium. Mr. Trickster's has everything that you need to perform all sorts of amazing feats for your friends and family. The deals are non-stop.
This is so cool!
The prices keep falling.
And you're not gonna burn through your money either.
At Mr. Trickster's, it's approved by the Brotherhood of Magicians.
Hell yeah!
Mr. Trickster's is conveniently located at the following nondescript locations. There's never the same location twice, never the same tricks twice, but always the same website. Nice. That's MrTricksters.com. MISTER Tricksters.com. Visit today to purchase your official t-shirt with the official logo of the official magic shop of the Brotherhood of Magicians. Mr. Trickster's Magic Emporium.
A wave of the wand, a roll of the dice, and never the same trick twice at Mr. Trickster's Magic Emporium.
Must be a member of the Brotherhood to enter actual location.
When the paranormal lurks in every shadow, and each mysterious artifact hides a ghostly tale, one show dares to uncover the truth. The Haunted Objects Podcast. Now you can wear the mystery. Introducing the official Haunted Objects merchandise. Hats, shirts, pins, and more. All designed by independent artists, manufactured by small businesses, and carrying the undeniable essence of the unexplained. Embrace the legend. Wear the mystery. Visit planetweird.store today.
I'm going to give you how we enter into this story. You'll get a little bit more of the previously on when you watch the documentary, but we had spent a couple weeks out in Mount Shasta chasing Bigfoot with the guys from Finding Bigfoot. It was one of the first big TV gigs that you and I had done together.
Yeah.
It was a special where we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
They were flesh and blood Bigfoot hunters, and they didn't want to do the woo-woo-y stuff, so they invited us to go and do it.
And what a place for it.
Fell in love.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 weeks driving around the mountains in California. We're just telling everybody, all the crew, we're telling them all of these spooky stories. We're telling them about different objects in the collection, different things that we dealt with, different cases we'd been on. And we told them, we've got this traveling museum that we travel around with. And the goal of it is always to help people have a paranormal experience, or sometimes they tell us stuff that we would never know about these objects because we get to meet so many interesting people when we're on the road. There's a few weeks after this, January of 2016, I got tagged into a Reddit thread that was already going on by Chris Carter, who was one of the field producers for Finding Bigfoot.
Not X-Files fame.
Yeah, not X-Files fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris had been the guy who was driving the van and listening to us tell all these crazy stories. And this Reddit thread was by a man who was very scared of something that he and a friend had taken out of a cave in the Catskill Mountains. That thing was this. It was a statue that had a noose around its neck and 3 nails hammered into each of its eyes. They claimed that there had been remnants of what they believed to be some kind of like witchcraft, some ritual happening. And one of them was like, do not take that thing. Don't touch it. And the other guy's like, I've never seen a horror movie before. I'm taking this home. Almost immediately, terrible things started to happen. They would find wet footprints walking through the house. Eventually, they noticed that the statue was moving from place to place on its own. It wasn't ever where they left it before. The final straw for these guys was when they ended up coming home. Their dog would not go in the house, and they walked in and saw an old woman, stark naked, dripping wet, scraggly long hair, standing in the corner of the living room. And the eyes shined like an animal's eyes do in the dark. They freaked out, they left, and they sent it to us. I tried to intervene, because I think one of the most important things that we can ever tell people about what we do is we don't like being the people who are going to solve a problem for you.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. The distinction that we always like to make is we're not Ed and Lorraine Warren. We're not Catholic. We're not going to put your stuff in a ring of salt or give an exorcism. We don't believe in any of that stuff. Our whole thing is to try and provide tools for people in order to solve their own paranormal problems.
Yeah, we'd rather you feel empowered and be able to utilize that in those instances, and maybe even other instances in your life, than to kind of make you feel like we're the only people who can change this for you or help you. It's really all about empowering people and kind of helping them navigate those spaces themselves, and with help, but really on their own 2 feet.
It's an important distinction that we like to make, because I think there are sometimes people who are like, well, I mean, I don't know what to do, and it's very difficult for us to solve somebody else's problem, because it'll just come back. And I think you see that in a lot of paranormal cases. You bring somebody in, they send the thing to the light, but it comes back the next week. It sticks if you figure out how to do it yourself, because I think it's that self-empowerment.
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. It stays forever then.
So my contribution to that Reddit thread was, listen, I get how you're feeling, but here's what I would do. Take it back, put it in the cave, back out of the cave. It'll feel silly, but say, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm really sorry. I won't do this again. And then just leave. Basically, apologize.
Yeah, you're vocalizing an intention.
Yes.
You're making it known. You're vocalizing an intention, which is really important.
So that didn't work. And they said, as it happens quite often, where people, they just want to go, I don't want to deal with this, take it. That's a big part of what we do. A lot of the things that we have are items that are sent to us that never do anything for us. They've got crazy stories behind them, but we never experience anything with, I would say, 90% of the things that people send us.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably because they've formed an attachment with that thing. And it's less about that thing causing the problem and more about whatever feeling or emotion they've attached to that thing.
Yes.
And by sending it to us, they sever that. It doesn't do anything for us. And it's one of those out of sight, out of mind kind of deals.
Yeah.
That's typically how we deal with this stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, this one was one of those ones where the response was, I don't want to go back to that cave. I don't know if we could find that cave. They were off the beaten path. I don't want to go back to that cave. I don't want to meet whoever put that thing there. And frankly, this thing terrifies me. I don't want to be out in the woods with it. So can we just send it to you? Well, a few days later, this thing shows up, and it looked a bit like, well, these were the original photos here. I'll show these to you first. These are the original photos of this thing as it was found in the cave. Got a little bit of dirt on it. Pretty spooky. What would you do if you saw one of those things in a cave?
It's so funny because I think of myself in two different ways. I'm like, what would I have done back then and what would I have done now?
Yeah, I guess that's the thing.
You know what I
this-
mean?
Exactly. There's two different
I don't know how to
versions.
answer that question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Again, my opinions on a lot of this stuff have evolved quite
Yes,
a bit
yeah.
since back in the day. But I can think back in like when I was my old ghost hunting days.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Oh man, I would have taken that thing in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feel a little bit differently these days.
Mhm.
So that's what it looked like when it was found. Here it is. I'm holding that in my hand. That's after it just showed up. It was wrapped in an old pillowcase. And we did what we do with these things every time somebody sends us something. We take a look at it, we kind of vibe it out. I didn't really feel any vibes. Did you?
No, I think like one of the things that I try to do with every object that comes in, I really try to respect the story, and I try to respect the situation that it happened around the object and the people experiencing it. But I try not to bring too much of that into my own experience, because I think part of what we do is really and you talked about it a few minutes ago, but the idea that when people give us things, there's almost a sense of they can kind of compartmentalize something. And when they hand it over to us, oftentimes, like you said, that any activity they had seems to just cease, And so one of the things that I try to do is really not bring too much of that person's experience into my own experience. I respect it, I document it, and I definitely keep it in mind, but I try not to let it affect me too much.
Yeah.
And so I think in this situation, I was kind of doing that. I was really just trying to just be, present with it.
Yeah.
As much as I could, and not allow myself to be tainted too much by anyone else's experiences.
I didn't really feel much.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked spooky.
It definitely
I think
looked creepy.
It's very obvious to anyone who has any kind of understanding of witchcraft that it's some form of sympathetic magic.
Sure.
Somebody's trying to blind someone or choke someone or kill someone.
Or silence someone.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really, other than just being spooked out by its appearance, I didn't really feel much about it.
Yeah.
And so we took a bunch of pictures and we set it in the chair and just went about our day, as we do with everything. Because again, 90% of the stuff people send us never does anything for us. So we're sitting in the living room and it's later that night and we hear a big crash at the other side of the apartment. We had two cats, fight and biting time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who has
poop zooms.
cats, yeah, the zooms, yeah. And our cats like to fight. Gordon loved to dominate Pete, and we'd always try and stop him from bullying Pete. And so I was like, I'll do it this time. So I get up and I go walk over because it sounded like it came from the office. I walk up and I realize the office door is closed. So I was like, oh, they must not be in there. So I walk into the bedroom and I'm looking for them and I don't see them anywhere until I look under the bed and they are scared out of their minds. Anyone listening who has pets, you guys know they're a great early warning sign that something strange is going on. Always pay attention to your pets. They can hear and see and sense things that we can't. And I thought, well, if they didn't do this, what did? So I walk into the office and I almost step on Jesus because I look up and on the wall is this cross without a Jesus. Jesus has been pulled off of this cross. Only a single arm was hanging there. That's when I got spooked.
Yeah.
That was a little spooky to experience.
I mean, any kind of religious iconography being desecrated is it's never a good vibe. It's not a good vibe.
No.
It definitely is a bummer vibe.
It is a bummer vibe. And I immediately knew something even stranger was going on because, accidents happen, things can happen, things can fall. We lived on a road that, sometimes trucks go by and rattle stuff.
Yeah.
But that only hangs with one nail.
Yeah.
And Jesus was nailed into that cross with 3 nails.
Yes.
2 of which were missing. Something had to have held that thing down and pulled it off.
It was just impossible. It was impossible. When we looked at it from every angle, we were thinking, did a truck drive by? Did it already have a hairline crack in it? How did it just the construction of the crucifix made it almost 100% impossible for that to have happened.
It was at that point that I said, Dana, okay, maybe there's something kind of spooky actually going on here. If there's really something crazy going on, well, we're going to try and capture this on camera. This is exactly where the Crone was sitting at the time. If you look at the slide that's on screen now, you can see it was right underneath the cross. It seemed very pointed. Something was trying to say something to us. That's the way that we try to interpret these things normally. Sometimes when things are scary, maybe they're trying to give us a message. Maybe they're trying to say something. I sometimes, one of the things that always drives me nuts when people ask us for help with a haunting is one of the first questions is, well, when it's trying to get your attention, do you speak to it? Do you talk to it? And usually the answer is like, no.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to raise its voice. Of course it's going to like react very strongly.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention, so it has no choice but to raise its voice.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this was one of those situations, right? Not too long after that, Dana calls me and says, hey, were you changing a light bulb in the living room? I was like, no, I've been in the office all day. She's like, you didn't take a shower.
I like that I added that part to the second time I asked the question. It's so weird because and I know that many of us here tonight have had weird experiences, and we've had experiences that are like really difficult to explain. And I think, and you know, anytime that's happened to me, I find that my brain immediately kicks on and tries to start logicking everything about it. And so just, you know, seeing a puddle, like 2 wet footprints on the upper part of the couch facing in a direction that is like, there's no reason for it. The only thing that the only kind of like story that my brain could come up with in the moment was that you had gotten out of the shower.
Sure.
And then
just
gone, I need to change this light bulb right now, and climbed up on the couch. But, and it was just, it was my rational brain trying to make sense of what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Which was 2 footprints sit on the top of the back part of the couch facing the wall.
It's kind of a weird one. Yeah.
Very weird.
That's Gordon. If you want to get a closer look.
Gordo's over there.
Gordy's in his safety box. Nothing can get him there. He's very curious about what's happening.
Yep.
I said, well, listen, we need to probably figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so we picked it up. We took it into the living room. We sat it down, and I can't really convey how silly you feel when you do things like this, but we had a conversation with an inanimate object, seemingly inanimate. It's
more of that vocalizing intention where we're coming to some sort of a boundary, and we're vocalizing it, and that's really what we're doing. And you're right, it does feel really silly because you feel like you're talking to an inanimate object.
Yeah.
But really you're putting that intention out there.
We said, listen, we're happy to share our space with you. We're happy to help you if there's something that you need help with. If we can do something for you, we're going to listen. We want to know.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, this is our space too. One of the things that we say a lot, which is silly but usually works, is when something new shows up in our space and we notice its presence, we'll say, hey, it's fine that you're here. Don't be creepy.
Yeah. Don't be creepy.
Don't be creepy.
Yeah.
Said it.
I think that's
a couple
fair.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like we've been saying it a lot more
I was just
lately.
Gonna say, we've said it a lot.
The podcast has been setting stuff off.
For sure.
So we said, don't be creepy. And as that was happening, that conversation was happening, we heard the sound of rushing water on the other side of our apartment. The last place that we'd lived in, we'd gone through a burst pipe. And if you've ever gone through one of those, they're terrible to go through.
Yeah, it was
truly
traumatic.
Upstairs neighbor, and it was like pouring through the light fixtures. It was horrible. And so we didn't think anything paranormal was going on. We were like, shit, we got to go find the valve, turn the water off. We jumped up and we ran to the other side of the apartment, but there's nothing. Looked in the laundry room. There's nothing going on there.
It's not even like it was
where the water turnoff was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as we're sitting there trying to figure out where this sound was coming from, we hear this doom, 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 doom in the living room. We slowly walk back into the living room, and the Crone is gone. This thing has disappeared, just like the story on Reddit.
Yeah.
Looking around for it, and I noticed that it has fallen off of the coffee table, Kind of hard to do. There's no real reason should have done that. Again, cats are scared. They're nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
And it has rolled under the television stand. Hard to do when you got nails sticking out of your eyes. So I get down on my hands and knees and I reach in and I go to grab it and I hear Dana shriek because the television has started to tip down onto my head. And she runs over and grabs it, sticks it back where it was falling from. And I grab the Crone, I sit it down. I'm like, listen, if this is how it's going to be, I'm going to do something that I don't like to do. I'm going to put you in a box and I'm going to put you on a shelf and I'm not going to think about you.
Yeah.
It's that out of sight, out of mind thing. And as I said that, we heard 3 loud boom, boom, boom on the kitchen wall. I said, okay, that's it. Locked it up, put it in the box, stuck it on a shelf, and it stayed there until we would go out on the road with it.
Yeah.
And it remained a thing that we didn't let people handle on the road.
Yeah, I think we would, we had a few things that were on the no touching list, and it was always on the no touching list. And even, there were a lot of events that we would go to back in the day where we wouldn't even bring the Crone out. Like if we were traveling with it, if the vibe was too aggressive, if there was too much of that,
the kind of events.
Yeah.
We do a lot of like Amy Bruni's events, Strange Escapes. Kindred Spirits. They got a vibe that really works with ours.
Yes.
But we did some other ones for the people who like to fight ghosts,
Yeah, and I mean, people, if you go to, we did a few horror events back in the day, and so I think you'd also get people who didn't really understand the gravity of what we were talking about.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of events, where we would have the Crone with us, and it just didn't feel like it was the right environment to bring it out. And so we would leave the box, behind or with us, but it was never out on the table. Yeah, she was on the no touching list, and it was a rule, like no one was allowed to touch the Crone. And again, most of those events probably didn't even feel comfortable to bring her out and set her up.
There was another thing that happened at the house that we hadn't really ever talked about very much, only a few times until we made the doc, where something came out of the closet, kind of manifested in the darkness, and scared the shit out of Dana.
Yeah.
You'll see that in the documentary.
Mm-hmm. We don't really talk about that publicly at all.
No. And I think it's part because we are very careful about how we tell story, because there's a lot of stuff in the museum you guys will never know about. You'll never hear about it. We might reference it in passing here and there. Some of the stuff, there were a couple podcast episodes even that Karl had even shot footage for, but we just did not feel like we could tell the right kind of story around it, or the story wasn't finished enough, and it really did not have a nice conclusion.
Yeah.
And we didn't know if this was going to be one of those things. So we're very particular about how we tell story, especially these days, because it does have a real world effect. So there's stuff about the Crone that you'll learn. And even if you've been a museum member for a while, you'll learn when you watch the Unbinding.
Jordan says, who was the first outsider you let touch her? You might hear about that.
You might hear about that in a little bit. There's actually a very funny story about that. Well, we had all kinds of experiences with the Crone. There were people who would be around it, their eyes would burn, and they couldn't stare at it for too long. There's people who could feel needles in their throat as they were dealing with it. People that were around it would feel things. There was a car accident even that happened, and someone blamed it on the Crone.
A lot of anxiety, a lot of apprehension. What's funny is people, you would either have people wanting to touch the Crone and interact with it, but I'd say for the most part 95% of the people who saw her at events, they weren't even interested in engaging. They were just like, that gives me it was instinctually, they didn't really want to have anything to do with her.
Yeah. The final straw with the Crone happened at Michigan Paracon. Michigan Paracon is one of the biggest events in the country. We've been going there for years and years, and at this particular event, we were situated at the very far end, because we've got the museum. They always situate us at the far end of the room, and there's usually 2 aisles that go down on either side. So you've got all these different booths all the way down. We're usually at the far end. So we're down at the far end of this aisle, and it was kind of between lectures that were going on. And so a lot of people would wait if there was something they wouldn't really care about happening on stage. Because we get a crowd around the museum so often, people would wait between lectures and they would come and they would see the museum then. Somebody came up to us and said, listen, I don't see the Crone out on display. It was one of those vibes. We just didn't feel the vibe. The vibe didn't feel right to have the Crone out. And this person said, I came from Canada. I really want to see this. I've heard you guys talk about this online. I really want to see it with my own eyes. And we kind of hemmed and hawed over it. And Dana was finally like, it's probably fine just for a second. And so I reached under the table. I pulled the box out, opened it up. As soon as it comes out of the pillowcase, it was like a force shot down the aisle. And lights were swinging. People were looking around because they could feel something going on. The speaker who was right across from us, it
was like a 2 liter of soda that like a big
cup,
huge,
big cup, and it just popped.
Yeah.
And it went all over hundreds of dollars of books, destroyed hundreds of dollars of books. I'll never forget, may she rest in peace, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, sitting there going, looking all over the place, what is going on? And then I noticed that halfway down the aisle on the right-hand side, there's a man sitting in a booth. His eyes are rolled up in the back of his head, and his neck is thrown back, his head's thrown back, and he's just bleeding out of his mouth. And
the other thing is, this all happened in the course of, it felt like forever, just sort of in the moment, but I think it must have been 10 seconds, if that even. It happened so quickly. All of these, boom, 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 like you said, like a force just kind of moving down the aisle.
Yeah. We immediately, I threw the thing back in its case, slammed the lid shut. Person who's asking us to see it is crying, saying, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have asked, put it away. And that's when I looked at Dana, and we both just kind of we're like, okay, this has to be the last time. We can never bring this thing out anymore.
No.
And we have to figure out a way to get this thing back to where it came from.
Yeah. And I mean, part of part of what we're always doing, specifically with the objects, is there's a lot of conflict resolution going on. And that's really the goal of what we're always sort of hoping, is to come to some sort of conclusion with a lot of the objects, specifically the ones that are intense and very, very active. And that was the moment where there was just absolutely no way around it. We knew that not only could we never travel with this object again, but it was the first one that we would really have to put everything into kind of doing right by, because we needed to come to some we needed to come to some kind of a resolution with it.
We started making plans to take it back. The challenges with that were, we knew the exact mountain it had been taken from. We knew the area it had been taken from, but that's it. And the Reddit guys had used a throwaway account. I'd tried sending more messages. Nothing ever came back. So we just sort of had to go, well, we can just hope we can get it back to at least its place of origin and leave it somewhere that looks the same, and maybe that'll be okay.
Yeah.
But we run a museum. It's a museum about preserving story. To do that, you have to have something to show for it. And so we tried to think about a way that we could preserve this thing, to replicate this thing. And we had been working with our friend, Jason Gowan, who was one of my oldest friends. I mean, I've known Jason forever. And Jason had been doing a 3D scanning project with us, trying to 3D scan the different items in the museum so that we could have digital versions of these things in our files, and we could share them with people, and maybe even make a digital museum people could visit if they couldn't see us in person.
Yep.
So this was kind of funny because it presented a little bit of a challenge, because on a live stream one time, Jason made a joke about how the Crone could have his baby as a sacrifice.
It was a very big labyrinth moment. Like Goblin King, like that. It was very much like
it wasn't. It's funny. It wasn't as bad as I'm making it out to sound. It was very much like,
it was a
oh
joke.
Darn, I was about ready to offer.
Yes.
And the funny thing that happened was,
funny thing.
Jason had a visit
Yeah.
from the Crone.
Yeah. Funny, not so funny thing that happened.
Not so funny thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe we should have Jason tell this story.
I think there's no one better who could tell this story than Mr. Jason Gowan.
Jason Gowan, welcome to the stream, buddy.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, man.
It's good to see you, man. We're going on the road.
Woo woo!
Our all-new Haunted Objects live tour is haunting 30 cities across the country, and we aren't just sharing never-before-seen evidence from our spookiest case files. We're asking you for your help in our craziest paranormal experiment yet.
Come and learn why the infamous Dybbuk box is scarier than the demon it's rumored to imprison.
Tag along with us as we reveal how we broke the curse of the Catskills Crone.
And learn the shocking truth about ghosts with an experiment that you'll never forget.
Plus, VIP ticket holders get a very special induction into our very real and very serious secret society.
The Sacred Order of the Haunted Object.
All this and more surprises await you when Haunted Objects Live comes to your town.
But don't wait too long, because tickets are already starting to sell out, and we're not taking this show on the road again.
Visit newkirktour.com for tickets and dates, and we'll see
you on... You gotta wait for me.
You came in like half a second. And we'll see you on the road.
We get a lot of stuff in the mail. 9 times out of 10, we don't experience anything. But that last 10% is where things get really interesting. And occasionally, there's 1% that changes the way that we think about haunted objects.
We bind it to the nails, and we release it.
The Unbinding, now available on Blu-ray, exclusively at planetweird.store.
Why don't you tell us about that visit that you had in the middle of the night by a terrifying entity that looked like an old woman?
You're going to need to be more specific, my friend. Anytime I hang out with you, it becomes an issue.
We're talking about the Crone this time.
Oh,
do you remember making that joke during the live stream?
I do. It haunts me because I run a pretty successful parenting brand now, and I'm like, well, I feel like that's going to come back to bite me.
For our listeners who aren't aware, Jason has a podcast called The Parents Lounge, and it's an excellent pod. It's very funny, and it revolves around funny parenting stories. So if you're parents, even if you're not parents, there's lots of really funny stuff. We've been on the show a few times. It's great. It's great. So you should check it out. But yeah, I'm wondering if this story might harm your brand.
I mean, it's a risk I'm taking, but so I made the joke, which, I mean, look, I was raised on Scooby-Doo, Ghostbusters, Buffy. Those were the three big influences. They all have one thing very specifically in common, which is the humor in the face of danger, which is what I did. It's what we did.
Yep.
And I made a joke about sacrificing my oldest, or I almost sacrificed my oldest. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but it was probably not the best. Look, the one thing I probably should have learned from Buffy is that those things are so literal. They take everything so literally.
No sense of humor.
You never read Latin in front of the books. We know this.
So I made a little jokey joke, and it probably was not the best time. Number one, also, I didn't know she could hear me. And like,
we don't know how this works.
Yeah, we don't know. We're just figuring it out as we go, man.
It was like not long after that, after I made the joke about my son, we were here in our living room, and we thought we heard, like you did, we thought the cats were running around, or our cat was running around upstairs. And then I looked, and she is on the couch, and both dogs are on the couch. And I'm like, oh. And it makes me laugh because when I moved in here, Melissa and I got together, she didn't believe in any of this stuff. She does now.
Poor Melissa. Poor Melissa. Sorry, Melissa.
Sorry, Melissa. Shout out, Melissa.
Shout out, Melissa.
She kept always asking me, is this safe? Is what you're doing safe? I'm like, no, not at all. This is completely stupid, but we're going to do it anyway. I don't get to have as much wild, adventurous fun since kids. So when I get to do stuff, I go all in.
I got a frantic call from Jason in the middle of the night after that stream.
Yes.
That's like, what the happening?
What is going on?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Because your back door had opened on its own.
And this was like dead of winter too. I think it was snowy.
It was a snowstorm night.
Yeah.
Actually. Well, the other weird thing is that when I went to investigate, when I went underneath we have like this divider. It's like an archway almost, and rain poured down on me, and I'm like, what is this? And then I went out into the kitchen, and it's wet everywhere. And so like I followed it, and I'm like, these are footprints. Who came in the house? And I went to the door, and our back door is wide open, but there are no footprints in the snow.
Oh my God.
And then I hear banging upstairs. And so then I call you guys. I'm like, hi, we've got to talk.
And it was Dana who said, oh my God, the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you put that, I didn't even think of it. And also, like, I had not even thought to go upstairs. And until Dana told me, hey, did you go upstairs? No, I didn't want to see it. That's like my number. I didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
And so while you guys were on FaceTime with me, I went up the stairs.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we found wet footprints on the stairs that went directly to my infant son's room.
Mm-hmm.
The door was open. The light was on. Thankfully, he was at my in-laws for the evening. And we walked directly in front of the crib, and there was a giant puddle directly in front of the crib, and stopped right there.
It's so scary. That scares me so much. Oh my God.
Dana put together a little package.
I know.
Yeah, no kidding. Dana put together a little package to send over and kind of like, help seal up the boundaries.
Yes.
And then not too long after that, we hit you up and said, hey, will you 3D scan the Crone? And of course you were like, yeah, but we can't do it at the house. Melissa's not going to let us in there.
I don't blame Melissa. I feel like she made a good choice. She made a good choice.
Because we knew, we explained to Jason what we were doing and how we wanted to have a copy of this thing before we decided to take this thing back.
Yeah.
And
we had done so many objects.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of objects
with Jason before that. And so this one was a little bit different.
Well, we decided this was a big moment. We were all a little nervous about this thing. And museum members are always interested in the stuff that we're doing. So we said, why don't we plan to scan this live?
It was Halloween night.
Halloween night.
Mm-hmm.
We scanned this thing. We rented a hotel room, which is probably going to be infamous after the doc comes out. And we set up and we did a live stream and we started to scan it.
Yeah.
Jason, you've been 3D scanning for years now. You've had
years
tons
and years.
of experience.
I've had the equipment forever. Like I'm an avid, creator. I used to build before I had kids and had time. I used to build crazy cosplays and stuff. And so I was constantly 3D scanning and 3D printing so that I could make all this stuff. And I have never seen anything like what happened with the Crone.
So let's set this up.
Yeah.
You can watch this full live stream. It's in the museum archives.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see a truncated version of this in the documentary, just the stuff that's important for the story.
But a really big chunk of it. I mean,
a
very big chunk of it is in
one of the most compelling Estes Method sessions I had ever seen ever. It was one of the first times you'd ever really done it.
I want to say it was like the first or second time, maybe.
Yeah.
I wasn't the first, but it was definitely like within the first 5 times of ever doing it.
Karl, when did this happen in reference to Hellier?
This happened like a month after we shot Hellier.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, you're right.
Because like I was watching that Halloween. You had just done the Estes Method because we had just introduced it to you that month before. And yeah, and you I think I have some clips in the doc from a Skype interview that you had done
With Jason.
That's right. Yep.
right after you got back from Hellier, setting up that Halloween scan right after it. So it was a month after Hellier season 1.
There's a lot of fun stuff like that in the documentary. You'll even
lot of
see
it.
scenes that you might recognize from Hellier because they were shot immediately before or after we were shooting for Hellier.
Yeah.
Well, to set this scene, we're in this room. Dana's sitting on the bed. We've got the Crone up on its box. Jason has his computer in his hand, and he's got the 3D scanner. And Dana's like, all right, I'm going in. She puts the Estes Method stuff on. And again, unbelievably compelling. And one of the first times that you had done this thing, especially for that long, because again, we'd just been introduced to it.
I think it was a really long session. I don't remember exactly how long it was, but I remember it being really. Do you remember how long it was, Karl? I feel like
you went for like 2 hours, almost like an hour 45, which is like crazy because anyone who's watched the live streams here in the group knows that like after like 40 minutes, you start to slow down, you start to tap out. And so for like the second or third time you'd ever done it, you're under for an hour 45.
It was like long,
exhausting.
I remember.
Is that how long it was? An hour and 45?
Yeah, I mean, just the Estes Method session.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
What? So Dana is under.
Yeah.
She's just kind of going into that trance-like state.
I have no idea what's happening in the room because I'm blindfolded and I can't hear anything.
And Jason starts the scan. What do you remember about that experience, Jason?
I remember because of the wood grain, we had to put baby powder on her because the wood because it wasn't scanning at first, and we had a little bit of trouble with it. And I do remember that. I remember that the software, whenever we would get anywhere around the neck, would start to glitch and was doing this weird like electrical like shaking thing that it had never done and has never done since.
I remember there were moments where Dana starts to speak and she starts to complain about pain in different points of her body.
Yeah.
What Dana didn't know is that every single time during that stream, even between gaps of 20 minutes or more between us making scans, it was only when Jason was pointing that scanning laser at it did Dana feel a pain on her body that corresponded to the part of the Crone Jason was scanning.
But the thing that was really interesting was I think between the second and the third, there was like 40 minutes between them. And it just perfectly correlated.
The scariest thing, I think, was after the scan was complete. So we did this scan. We did a couple of them. They came out really good.
They were really good. I remember that we also, because we knew it was going to be live streamed, that I moved all of the CPU around and memory around in my computer so that it was going to be a clear cut, like precise scan.
Well, we got some scans. We were happy with them.
Yeah.
We started to get a lot of stuff through the Estes Method that seemed to show that maybe there wasn't just one intelligence that was trying to communicate through this thing, but potentially two.
Yeah.
And potentially to each other.
Yeah, it was like I remember it being like an info dump. Like we got a lot of information from that first session, and then we could sort of start researching it and digging into it and kind of following the trail a little bit. But there was a lot of information that came through in the first one, for sure.
I thought that this was it. Like we had gotten a lot of information out of this, and I thought, okay, this is it. We're good. We're ready to go and take this thing back.
Yeah.
Well, Crone had other plans, or at least whatever else was in the Crone had other plans, because when it came time for Jason to actually make the print of these things, we had to do something kind of unique. And one of the things that Jason was always doing is trying to make these 3D scans, because a 3D scan when you see it.
Yeah.
He was always trying to make them really unique. So when
dynamic.
we did a 3D scan of the Dark Mirror, Jason put little black mirrors on them so you could actually use them for scrying.
Yeah.
Fun stuff like that. When Jason did a scan of Billy, burlap sacks went around him. This one, the idea was to have actual nails in an actual noose on the item itself. Well, you had to do something that felt kind of uncomfortable in order to make that work, didn't you?
I had to remove her head.
Digitally.
Yeah.
We should. Yeah.
I was very respectful of her boundaries at the time.
Yes.
But at the same time, the 3D scan did not want her head removed. And like, I remember like, even when I would pull the mouse away, the mouse would continue to work on its own and it was just doing its own thing.
Oh my
And all
God.
of a sudden these like, they were almost like finger-like tendrils started coming up. Yeah, there they are. Started coming up out of the neck. And it was so, and it would fight me. I couldn't get it to work the way it needed to. It took me forever to finally get it to cooperate. But like, because it was making its own shapes and I would shut down the computer and restart. I tried this so many times to get it to work the right way, and it just was not having it.
Even on the screen, you can see that it's like there's like the divot from like a fingernail.
Oh, you can see the fingernail on it.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind that thing, like those fingers are proportionate.
Yeah.
Like they're not human fingers.
No, when you look at the shape, you're absolutely right. It's hard to think of that when you're looking at it, but you're totally right. They're really small.
They're tiny, and it looks like they're trying to escape from the thing itself.
Yeah.
It was our friend Miriam who actually put this idea in my head that I had not thought about before. I don't know if you even thought about this before, Jason, but it almost looks like they're coming out to try and remove the noose.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, if they had just asked nicely.
So scary.
So it goes without saying, the Crone did not get reproduced properly because it just could not happen. How do you feel looking back on that now?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, for years and years and years and years, it was just like you, me, and our group of friends who were willingly there, who chose to be there.
Yeah.
And when it came to my son and he didn't have the choice to investigate this stuff. He didn't give his consent to be part of this. When it came for him, it changed the way I saw everything. Am I always going to have a fondness for making, a smart ass comment in the face of danger? Yeah, it's that's hardwired in. Yeah. But I'm also going to be very careful to make sure that the words I say aren't going to affect my family after.
Yeah, that's a good outlook.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, I love you, man. Thank you for being here.
I love you too. I get to see you guys, not too long, and we'll go on some adventures.
If people want to find out more about you, where do they go?
Oh, yeah. You can catch us live. We're live every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, Facebook.com/The Parents Lounge. We interview all kinds of different people from Richard Marks to Dave Keckner from The Office about raising kids. And you can, like I said, you can catch us on iTunes. All our episodes are on iTunes. And you can catch me at Jason Gowan on pretty much all social media.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye. Sorry for torturing you and tormenting you on accident occasionally.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Bye.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
Well, as you can see at this point in the story, we've found that we are having a very hard time making a replica of this thing. And the clock is ticking, and this thing seems to be getting more and more upset with us for not returning it back to where it wants to go.
Yes.
I think it took another year.
It did. I think
at this point before we finally stepped foot on that mountain.
Yeah.
Before that could happen, we had a very serendipitous meeting with a young whippersnapper who really, really wanted to touch the Crone.
You really wanted to touch that Crone?
Really wanted to touch that Crone.
Touch that Crone.
We decided there was one shot at getting this thing up on that mountain.
Yep.
And we didn't want to wait another year. Like, it had taken so long that we were scared to wait any longer. The type of stuff that was happening around it, the type of experiences that people were experiencing, they were not nice.
No.
They were frightening. Even though we're always trying to, be curious instead of afraid. That's our mantra around here is curiosity, not fear. We met a guy by the name of Tyler Strand. And Tyler Strand was a special makeup and effects artist. Tyler had really impressed us because he'd heard us telling a story at one point about a location that we were very interested in, and he decided he wanted to go and preserve some things about it because we were concerned. What the things that I always talked about is being concerned that this location, because it had gotten a reputation with teenagers who were just, out for kicks, which I get.
Yeah.
It might accidentally burn down or something like that. And so Tyler took it upon himself to surprise us, and he went and stayed at this place.
Yeah.
And made molds of all of the strange carvings and stuff all over the building so that we would have something to preserve in case something happened to this place. It was at that point where we were like, oh shit, well, maybe Tyler can help us make a replica of this thing.
Yeah.
Because his thing, we'd had so many problems with technology, using technology to try and 3D scan these things. It just didn't seem to work very well. Tyler's methods were very old school in the way that they were like old school special makeup and effects stuff. So he could take this thing and make a mold of it.
Yeah.
And it would be exact.
Yeah.
It requires a particular set of skills that not everybody has. Well, Tyler had those things. And because of that, we reached out to him and said, hey, do you want to help us take this thing back?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, of course. I'll tell you a very funny story. After Tyler gave us this presentation, it was at Michigan Paracon. Tyler sits us down, waits till the end of the day to sit us down in this like lounge area. And it's, we'd been at the Manning the Museum all day long, but he was so excited. He sits us down and he gives us this entire presentation. He shows us these planks that he's made, and they looked incredible. One of them was painted up. You'd never know that this thing wasn't made out of real wood, but it was like a 2-part plastic. And he was like, I just wanted to show you guys I can help. I can help with the stuff that you're doing. And this is proving it. And we're like, dude, that you're in. That's great. Let's go. Let's figure out some stuff to work on together. It's like 3 a.m. I got to wake up. Like, dude, you're in. I got to go upstairs and go to bed. He's like, I'll just get on the elevator with you. He was on the first floor. He was just going to ride the elevator up two levels with us. And we're in the elevator and we get up there and we walk out. And as the elevator starts to close,
I'll literally never forget the visual image.
The doors start to close. And he peeks his head out and he goes, I want to hold the Crone. And then the door just closes.
He as it was closing, he's I think he said, I want to touch the Crone. I want to touch the Crone. And then the doors just closed right in his face.
Because he knew we didn't let anybody hold it. Yeah. We didn't let anybody touch it.
Seared into my head for the rest of my life.
It was so funny. Well, when we called Tyler and we're like, listen, we have a mission. We want you to come on with us because you're a man with a particular set of skills that can help us with this. And when we told him what it was, he was like, yeah, let's do it.
I think we asked him, like, is this possible? Can we do this? Is this even a possibility?
Well, because there was a snag here.
So one of the more kind of overwhelming and frustrating things was not only were we making a mold, or was Tyler making a mold of the Crone, but there was a ritual that was having to happen at the exact same time. So it was sort of like and we were doing it on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. So
Tyler didn't exactly know that yet. So he's like, no, that's fine. Like we could we'll have a ritual circle and we can do the stuff in it. And I was like, well, it's going to be on a mountain.
Yeah.
Tyler's like, well, I guess, if we can keep it like the right temperature and have the stuff set up, it'd probably work. And I was like, well, it's going to be like at the end of October and it's going to be like really cold on the mountain.
Real
He's like,
cold.
Oh, I don't know. And he's like, I don't think anybody's ever done anything like this. He's like, they usually have like heated garages and stuff like that. And then of course, true to Strand fashion. Yeah, we could do it. Let's do it. Let's go. So with that in mind, I want to bring in a special guest to talk to us about this process of this ritual. Everyone give a warm welcome to Tyler Strand.
Oh, no.
Hey, buddy.
Hello.
Do you wish you could have weekly episodes of the Haunted Objects podcast? If so, you're in luck because we just launched Museum Mailbag, a companion show where we dive deep into previous episodes' topics, answer your questions about the unexplained, and reveal the secrets of the universe.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. The only way to get the show is to become a member of the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. Becoming a member doesn't just support the show, it also gives you access to monthly live-streamed adventures and experiments with us.
And a magical monthly subscription box with live classes about the occult and witchcraft with me.
Plus, you'll get downloadable goodies, exclusive merch, and more.
To join the museum and get your weekly dose of the Haunted Objects podcast and so much more, join us at patreon.com/paramuseum.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. You know, it's funny. I don't have the most dramatic backdrop because I'm not even in my apartment right now.
You're just you're a man with things to do. You're always on an adventure.
Always on an adventure. This adventure happens to be house sitting a cat.
That's the best kind of adventure.
That doesn't sound like a bad adventure. What do you remember? Because what was it about the Crone? Because I remember the first time we met you at Michigan Paracon, you were really interested in the Crone. What was it about it?
You guys had differing opinions about the Crone.
Oh,
and there was
yeah,
discourse about it. And I was like, whoa, that's really strange, because typically if someone is making something up, they're going to be on the same page with it because they're trying to sell you an idea. And it was really apparent to me from the get-go. I'm like, oh, these people are real. You know, they mean business with this stuff. They're actually trying to figure this stuff out. So that really fueled my interest. But the other thing that I loved about it, and this was part of the conversations that we were having, like in real time, in person as strangers, was going through like every little detail of this object. And what we thought was so strange, particularly I remember talking to Dana about this, we were looking at the bottom of the object.
Yeah, I totally remember this conversation.
So what's weird is the object itself in totality looks like an old carving, or it could be. But what's weird, and what we kept going back and forth on, is how strange it was that the other items included into it seemed to be very modern. You know, like, for instance, the noose looked like it could have been maybe a shoelace or something. Like, it was clearly like modern items added to something that could have been old. But when it came to the base of the object, what I thought was really interesting is how it very much seemed to be something that was cut with a power tool. And that's something we don't really talk a whole lot about. So we were kind of going back and forth. And even then there were little seeds where I remember talking with Dana, where we're like, it seems like it could have been an old object. Maybe it was cut from a church. Who knows? But it seems to be some kind of possibly religious type object that someone desecrated in some way. Or maybe, we didn't really know. And you guys had some varying thoughts, which, amplified that curiosity, because I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, this is an actual mystery.
So we already knew that Tyler had these skills as an artist.
Yeah.
Do you remember what was going through your head when I hit you up and I was like,
as we layered all of the different things that were going to make your job,
I was like, hey, we want to do this thing and it's going to be really up and complicated. What was going through your head?
Oh, I loved it. I loved the whole idea of it, and I didn't even know if we were going to even be able to do it, but I didn't care. You know, it was like, who cares, right?
What an adventure!
Like even if we all die, at least we tried. You know,
we got close. It was close.
But the most complicated part of it came down to the fact that a lot of these silicones require a certain temperature to cure or solidify, and being on a freezing mountain is not ideal for solidifying said silicones. So we literally had to buy an entire separate tent that we weren't going to sleep in, with entirely separate heaters that we would not have the privilege of feeling.
We could only take one heater. We didn't have enough arms, so we had one heater, and it was for that tent.
And that's like one of the most important details is like everything that we needed to pull off not only a ritual. First of all, not only a huge hike. Secondly, a pretty complex ritual, and making a mold, we had to take with us, and we couldn't bring anything else. Like, it wasn't like we could just go back to the car and get like the things that we needed. Like, we were going to be gone a while, hours and hours and hours. It wasn't going to be plausible for us to go back to the car. So we had to be able to carry everything that we needed with us up a mountain in October And so Tyler was like a pack mule, and he had like,
oh, poor Tyler.
You had like do you remember you had like a duffel bag
my God.
on the front of your body?
On the front of me. You know what I kept thinking about them to endure it? I kept thinking about us being like soldiers in another time. And I had like a giant Gatling gun. It was like the only way. It was like the only way to endure this hike up the mountain. I was like, oh, I'm the heavy gunner.
Because the point of what we were doing was in order to do this unbinding, which we felt at the time, and you'll see why in the documentary, was extremely important for us to do. Like this thing was screaming at us to do this. To perform that, we had to go to the Crone's place of origin.
Yeah.
We had to get there. Dana had to cast a circle, and we could not leave that circle until the ritual was complete.
Yeah.
But the ritual's not fully complete until the Crone has been molded. So we have to do the mold in ritual space.
Yeah. Every action that we were taking, I mean, like, I think we talked about this, but I really felt like we were mystics. Like I felt like we were going up the mountain to do something and to take part in something powerful and mystical, and all of the actions that took place, I think from like the moment that we got out of the car and started walking up the mountain, it felt like they were all like the ritual was in play, like the active ritual was in play. And
you actually gave me
like
goosebumps. You gave me goosebumps. I'm glad you brought that up because that always stuck with me. You actually said that out loud.
Yeah.
Specifically what you said. Well, we were hiking, you know, we're like sweating, we're all carrying all this various stuff. And you had this
we're
moment.
making fun of ourselves because we were like, are we crazy?
Yeah.
Are we like, are we nuts
like
doing this?
Do.
Like we couldn't, because we met some people at the base of the mountain and told them we were very honest about what we were doing. They were like, what?
Well, actually, wait, I don't think this is in the doc, but do you want to touch base on the kind of odd, creepy synchronicity with that moment? Do you remember?
So the people that we met, they were looking for crystals. They were looking for stones on the mountain. And they told us that they had just gotten back from...
Well, wait.
No. You tell it then.
No. So, the only reason I cut you off, I don't want you to spoil what happened the week before. The week before we went on this journey, we kept making jokes.
Oh, that's right.
We kept making jokes about how everything we're filming is going to end up like the Blair Witch Project.
People are just going to think it's the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
They're going to find we're going to go missing or something horrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to find our like footage. So now, like, do you want me to continue? Like,
no, go ahead. You finish it.
So we're making these jokes like a week leading up to it. And we're like, oh man, they're going to find our footage. And, you know, it's going to be like the Blair Witch. So right when we're at the base of this mountain, we just start the journey. And this really freaky incident occurs where like we hear this like something rushing towards us. And these two giant dogs come running down this like rocky path, and they like run up to us. We're like, whoa, you know, and we're like, you know, but they're friendly. They're nice boys. And up ahead, seemingly the dog's owners come down, and they're these two women. And I don't remember that detail that you mentioned that they were looking for crystals, but we end up talking to them. We're like, oh, what are you doing on this trail? And Greg explains to them, you know, that we're doing this very strange thing and that we're trying to bring back this cursed object. And
I love
then
no part of us
the craziest synchronicity, like a true synchronicity, these ladies are like, you know, it's so weird. She goes, we actually just got back from the house of the guy who directed the Blair Witch Project. Like, what is going on?
It didn't make
friends with the guy.
It definitely didn't make us feel any better.
No.
At that point, we were like eyeballing each other, like, should we maybe not do this anymore?
We're at least Dana and I are not outdoorsy people.
Sure.
And we're very much like basement dwellers. and not outdoorsmen. Mystics, not outdoorsmen.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Neckbeards, not mystics.
you know what? We took up the mountain. We knew we couldn't leave the ritual circle till the sun came up. You know what we took for sustenance?
Yeah, we weren't really.
We took a
this one through.
6-pack of Monsters and some vegan jerky.
We had some jerky.
Oh, that jerky was so good, though.
It's really good.
And we had one container of water, and then that was it.
Well, this is Strand and I heading up the hike. Dana didn't like the hike quite as much as we did.
No.
We
was
gave her
real
the least
happy.
amount of stuff.
I think I'm literally just carrying a sleeping bag. Yes, a sleeping bag and like a thing.
Yeah.
It sucked.
Hold on, keep
Not
that
fun.
going. Keep that going.
So we hiked up, we set up the ritual. This is a great opportunity for you to talk about the ritual, Dana.
Yeah. So I knew going into it, all of us had the thing that we had to kind of prep for. And for me, it was, what was this ritual going to look like? How are we going to do it? And so I took a lot of time thinking about how I wanted this ritual to be. And one of the things that I started doing about 8 or 9 months before the ritual was, I started to prepare a really specific black salt that we would use to create the kind of outer ring of the ritual space. And so, over the course of like 8 or 9 months, I would add to it. I would add different kinds of ingredients. And so I was sort of mentally preparing for it, but I knew I wanted the ritual to be less complicated and more impactful for us, and just that the space would be, that it would be kind of like a very kind of concise and easy thing for all of us to do, because I knew we would be physically exhausted, and I knew that we would be mentally exhausted from thinking about all of the things that were going to have to take place afterwards. So as Greg mentioned, we needed to create a sacred circle. We needed to create sacred space. And really what that is, for those who don't necessarily know, sacred space or a sacred circle, there's lots of different references for it. But what we're essentially doing is we're creating a time, or creating a space that is out of time. That's the idea. We're creating a liminal space, literally. And we want to create this liminal space. We want to create this space out of time so that our ritual is kind of existing both in the physical world and in all of the other dimensional worlds. And so we really had to consider that. And so we created this large circle. And the idea is the circle contains the energy that we are raising. So often in magic, if you're practicing magic and you don't necessarily work with circles, energetic circles, sacred circles, what happens is, when magic, we're raising energy, and when it reaches the peak, we charge it with intention. And there's lots of different ways to do that. Some more fun than others, but we raise that energy to its peak. We program it with intention, and then we release it and it dissipates. Well, when you're doing that outside of a circle space, what happens is we raise the energy, but it just consistently dissipates away. So it can be really exhausting for the magician, because you don't have this energetic kind of membrane that is keeping the energy that we're raising. And we knew, again, that this ritual wasn't going to necessarily be just the physical ritual itself. The ritual also would kind of extend into the mold making process. So it was part of this whole thing, and which is why we needed it. We needed to stay within this ritual space for the extended period of time that we were there. So when we found a spot, after hours and hours of hiking, once we found a spot that we thought was suitable and could be useful for what we needed it to be, we had to start literally from the bottom. We had to start creating ritual space. So we marked our space, and you'll see it in the documentary, but we marked our space directionally. We recognized each direction. We recognized the spirits of each direction. Basically, we were starting to create ritual architecture in the space that we were in. We wanted it to have those ritual bones. And so, yes, after we started using the black salt that I had taken, 9 months to make, we created our perimeter. We had to have all of the wood within in the space. We had everything that we would need. So we could not leave the space.
And there are questions that people have been asking about, where did you pee
Yes.
You have to do it in
we
the
had
circle.
a designated P spot. But yeah, all of it has to sort of be within the space, and you have to consider all of it. You have to build that ritual space up layer by layer by layer. And so we were able to kind of do that and to start to sort of again create that ritual architecture so that we could do the physical ritual itself.
Can I add that the ritual architecture in this instance happened to mimic the level of architecture one would see in Minecraft, and we happen to be low. We happen to be low on wood supplies.
we did run out of wood and froze. I mean, it was a bad night. I was genuinely worried for our safety. We could have died, truly.
At a certain point, at about like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're like, there's still a couple hours till the sun comes up.
Oh yeah,
I was
and you hear
real
shit
nervous.
Stomping around outside your tent.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
my
really nervous. I one of the things, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was like a possibility that it was going to rain that night.
My God. Oh, yeah.
We literally would have frozen to death. Up
our tents were not rated for cold weather. Our sleeping bags were not rated for cold weather.
We were not fully prepared.
What the image that everyone's looking at on screen right now is Dana meditating in front of the candle, and you can see on there's a big stone that was there that made like a perfect altar. And on it is the Crone's box and then 2 pairs of pliers. And I it's just such a weird thing because I'd never really thought about it before that point, to see what a consecrated tool could be. They're not just wands.
Yeah.
They're not just cups.
Yeah. I mean, any tool that we were using in that space specifically for that portion of the ritual had to be prepared for ritual use. So we had to cleanse and consecrate and prepare pliers and just anything that we were using, like, sticky tabs for marking the different things that we were removing from it. All of it had to be ritually prepared for that kind of use. And so there was a lot of that kind of preparation.
Yeah.
But we had it kind of all ready to go at a certain point.
This is Dana actually cleansing the crone itself, getting it prepared, ready for the ritual.
Yeah, and one of the things I didn't talk about this really, but one of the things that I'm doing here is I'm sort of visualizing. I'm visualizing as I'm using breath and herbs on this specific object. I'm visualizing to help it sort of stop the enmeshment process. So I'm beginning to like visualize a splitting and a release from physical object to metaphysical energy or intelligence. So I'm really kind of mentally thinking about the process of kind of separating those two things. And it took, I don't know, about an hour and a half of just consistently kind of doing that in terms of what that ritual process was.
We've never released the footage of the ritual.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen that. It's being seen by the world for the first time in this documentary.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of what happened. After Dana had consecrated everything, her part was done. She'd spent a very intense day in meditation and planning all of this, and the hike, notwithstanding. And so after that was done, it was my turn. And one by one, I had to pull every nail out of the crone's eyes.
Yeah.
And I've never felt something like those nails weren't terribly deep in there.
Yeah.
But they fought me the whole time.
It was very uncomfortable.
Strenuous.
That process was it was uncomfortable to watch. It was difficult.
Yeah. It was hard.
It was hard.
It was hard. It was hard to witness. It was hard to be part of, and it was physically hard too, because these nails did not want to come out. When the last nail came out, and I put a little tag on it so I knew which nail it was, where it went. We put them all away. We kind of surprised Tyler. Tyler didn't realize that he was going to play a part in this ritual too. And Tyler was the one to take the noose off.
Yeah. There were very defined roles for sure. for me, I think what I'm picking up is like it was a very archetypal experience.
Yeah,
like there was an archetype that like presented itself, I think, to each of us from this one object, and like each of us were allowed to kind of explore that what that archetype meant within ourselves. And I think that people watching that ritual will also experience that.
I think
because
so,
it really
too.
just it like presents itself in that moment in a big way.
When that noose slipped off, there was like an electric pop in the atmosphere, and all of a sudden this thing that we had been so scared of was just a chunk of wood.
The vibe for me it immediately felt like we were at like a funeral, like again, that reverence, like in a different way, like it felt somber, and not sad, but somber, like as if, you know, there was something that shifted and changed.
And as we're sitting there, I mean, we all just broke down. We all started sobbing because it was such a big end to a really impactful journey in a lot of ways. And being up there was really impactful. And it felt like we knew it was gone. Whatever it was that was there, we think we know now, as you'll see in the doc, was gone. And the deed was finished. And as we're sitting there, wiping the tears away from our eyes, Dana's like, listen. And all of the coyotes all over the mountain started howling.
And
There's a whole cacophony of these howls. It was...
I mean, like, we should also say, like, as we were walking up the mountain, hours where we were setting up, we didn't hear anything.
No.
Like, we didn't hear any
ritual,
animals. Nothing. It was like that moment, like an entire pack of coyotes just lit up the whole mountain, and you could just hear them, like you could hear the sounds just echoing everywhere. And it was so, like, there was no way that we at that point weren't hyper aware that we had completed something. We had finished something. And it was such I'll never forget it ever. It was incredible.
Well, go ahead, Strand.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it's interesting too, because the wood, when it comes to the physicality of the object, the wood itself is very interesting. It's very lightweight. But what's interesting is I think that was offset by a different kind of weight. That it was only after that release you could finally feel how light that wood really was.
You are 100% right.
That's really true.
Somebody asked if they said, I hope they caught that on camera. Oh yeah, that's all on camera. Yeah, you'll see it for the first time. Nobody's seen this footage. We've never released it. We've never put it on the Patreon. There's a lot of the story that no one knows
Karl's seen it a lot.
Karl's seen it a lot.
Rest in peace, Karl. Rest in peace.
Well, speaking of resting in peace, Dana got to go and rest, and then Tyler and I had another job to do, which we affectionately called what, Tyler?
We were trapped in the tent dimension. It was a Lovecraftian horror beyond comprehension.
A pocket dimension where everything goes wrong.
And you're hot and you're covered in blue slime.
So what we had to do is we'd had the heater going in that tent for the whole night, so that tent could stay the right, was like 70 degrees or something.
Oh my God, it was so hot.
It was so hot, and we were already so cold up on the mountain. We get into the tent, it's hot. We have to take all of our jackets and everything off. And then starts like just complete chaos while we're trying to figure out how to do this. And like Strand had everything it was like perfectly ready to go. You can see that he's got the little plug. You want to talk about what that plug is supposed to be for?
You're giving people a lot to run with the fan fiction here. We're talking about plugs and a couple of dudes going this real hot tent. Working with a lot of this slime, getting covered in slime.
But
that's magic. That's what magic is, man. There's all slime and magic.
I guess so. But anyway, okay, so they jump into the process. There's this really, what you're seeing in this particular image, we already had our box mold made, and what you see at the very end of the base of the Crone, which, by the way, that's what I think is a very clearly power cut bottom, by the way, the buzzsaw. Anyway, the reason I have that clay at the end is the idea behind it you can see it doesn't go all the way out to the edge. That clay was going to act as like the very top of the spout that the material would be poured into after the mold was created. So the idea was to adhere that clay, which is malleable, to the bottom, like kind of rely on the fact that it's malleable to squish. So that's what we did. We took this object, we smushed it down. I had that clay kind of stick to that foam board, and then it came to mixing the silicone, which you see here. Poured up 2 of them, get our 50-50 mix. Those 2 went in the one, filled all the way up to the top, had to mix that, did a double pour, and do another one. So we're all working against the clock. We're like sweating bullets. We're like so stressed because it's like we knew we accomplished this goal, and like we felt good about it. We knew like whatever was in this thing released. But it was we were so exhausted. We didn't even want to deal with this. We have the object in the box mold. We get it all mixed up in a pitcher. Fills all the way up to the top. And let me do this. Fills all the way up to the top. So like if the bottom of my screen is the top of the box mold, the liquid goes all the way up to the top. And then we see slowly the Crone's head go. It floats up like a phantom out of the abyss. It defies all odds of the mold, covered in blue slime. It's like those moments in the horror movies and the monsters coming out of the swamp and just like raises up. The Crone does this. It floats perfectly up. I'm like, ah!
Dana, do you remember us screaming?
I mean, you have to imagine, like, I'm outside of the tent dimension. I'm just sort of like, I'm sitting by the fire for a little while, and I was too like, I was too nervous to try to go to sleep because I was like, oh, there could be animals or something. But I'm just listening to like progressive, like, chaos, like just absolute. And like you would go back and forth between like I remember because it was like there was this celebratory moment where you were like, we did it. Like you guys were so psyched, and I was like, thank God. Like I almost felt like I could just sort of rest for a second and be like, oh, thank God, we did it. And then it was just like, I think Strand calls it maximum chaos, and it's just maximum chaos. It was just screaming. The tent was shaking all over the place.
I could only see silhouettes.
I could only see your silhouettes in there. It was just absolutely like, it was like Lynchian. Like it was it was a nightmare.
So we're just sitting there screaming, it's over. And I remember Strand was really upset about it. And I was like, listen, dude, we did what we came here to do. If this didn't work out, it's fine. We did something important tonight, and if it doesn't work, whatever.
And here's why. Like, just for clarity, like why that was so detrimental is like silicone. If you think about it in its uncured state, being like oil, right? Like nothing, like it sticks. Like once it's sticking to something, it's almost impossible to get rid of it. By the time we had poured this material, that material was already starting to like congeal. It seemed to have like a very fast like initial cure with work time. And because it floated up and disconnected, you have to think that base, which was devoid of material, now had oil covering it. It wouldn't matter what we did. The stuff was too congealed at that time. There was no like, oh, let's pour it out and put in a different thing. We didn't have a different thing. We had one box mold. So like there was no getting rid of that oil, so to speak. Like, and you can't just have an object floating in the center. You know, it would have been all off and it wouldn't work. But then, in truly what I feel is a metaphysical way as well, a solution presented itself within the mind. In fact, I don't even know, Greg, you may have even been the one where you're like, is there just a way we can stick it in there? And I was like, well, no, there's no way we could do it. Like, how would it stay there, right? But then I had the epiphany where I'm like, oh my God. And it was like truly this MacGyver type moment where we had these tent stakes on the outside of the tent, right? Like holding the tent down. And because I've worked with this clay all throughout like my schooling, I know that it's susceptible to heat. What I end up doing is I take these two heated ends of the tent stakes and I burn them into that little clay plug so that there's a bridge that can hit and stay suspended over that circular opening of the pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having the material pour on top of the Crone, we stick the Crone in upside down and have the 2 tent stakes stop it from floating to the bottom and holding it in place. And we just duct tape the hell out of it and threw a Hail Mary and hope that it would work.
And we couldn't think about it anymore. So we just, we after we were done, you know, with the very next day, we woke up, had a horrible night, couldn't sleep at all. And then we hiked all the way back down the mountain.
Yeah.
But we get back and then we have to replicate this thing. We waited 6 months or so before we did this.
Yeah.
Karl shot all of this. This is the first time. This was the moment of truth right here.
Yeah.
To see if this thing was actually going to work.
Yeah.
And so Tyler mixes the two-part
You can see the mold.
pour. Pours it in.
Yeah,
you can see how we had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's literally in the shape of the pitcher, which is like literally the top. The reason why all those wrinkles and stuff are in the top, that's literally the duct tape.
Duct tape.
We literally molded the form
God.
of the duct tape in the silicone.
But you know what? Look at that. That's Tyler's final product right there. You'd never know that wasn't the original.
Yeah.
That's this thing right here.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
It's so strange because like it's so much heavier physically.
Yeah.
It's so much heavier. It's so weird to think that like less than like a quarter of the weight of this was what the Crone actually weighed.
Well, you did it. Nice work. Tyler, thank you for coming and being on the live show, talking about your craft. See you, Strand.
All right, I'll see ya.
I really hope that, you know, I talked about this earlier, that my view on this documentary has changed a lot because we've been working on it for so long. It's taken a long time to get it to the point where it is now. And it's a good thing because there's things you'll see, very meta moments in the documentary where you're seeing us learn information for the first time after we thought we were done.
Oh yeah.
And
there's a lot of moments that I can see you like grappling with this because you're talking recently about events in the past, and I can see you just like wanting to like update your thinking, but having to tell that story of the time period. And I know that for both of you guys, as you told the story of the Crone throughout this doc, was a difficult part of the process.
Yes. I mean, I'll be very honest with you and say that the first half of the doc is very difficult for me to watch because I've changed so much in my views on just the paranormal in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to mention haunted objects. It's changed so much since the Crone came into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I've changed is because of the experiences that we went through with this. I didn't really talk a lot about how it affected me tonight. You'll see a lot of that in the documentary. You'll see a lot of, I mean, I think I make it pretty explicit in the doc how I want people to think about this when it's over. When they're sitting by themselves after having watched this, there's a certain way that I'd like people to at least just try and like look at their own belief systems when it comes to the paranormal. And that's something that I think is difficult for a lot of people to do. It's difficult for me to do. It took me a long time to get to the point where I was choosing curiosity over fear. But I know that if we didn't do that in this situation, we wouldn't have learned the things that we've learned, and we wouldn't be releasing this documentary out to the world that I think is going to change a lot of people's perspectives on ghosts, the paranormal, haunted objects. And really, I do look at this as a door closing on a chapter for us, and I hope for the paranormal industrial complex. You know, I saw what we were able to do with something like Hellier, and I saw one of the things that I see all the time is people saying, I can't watch paranormal TV anymore after watching Hellier. I hope this does the same thing, but with a very explicit reasoning behind it. That people can look at this and point to this and say, we've been doing this all wrong. I've been watching people do this all wrong. We make mistakes, but I think that this documentary really shows the power of pushing past that fear that you might have of the unknown and what you gain from it. Because truly it is a mystical journey. It is us climbing up a mountain to commune with the other. Coming back down as changed people and sharing that with other people to hopefully inspire them to have those same types of journeys. That's what I hope people get out of this. I hope that they get a new perspective on something that we have been dealing with since human beings could tell ghost stories. And I hope that it shows them why it's so important that we tell stories the right way. And even more importantly, engage with them the right way. So after all of that, I think it's fair to say that the last 4 hours have shown us why the Catskills Crone is a haunted object. We hope you guys enjoyed that special episode. Like I said, it only aired one time. There's some really funny stuff in there, lots of insight into the making of the Unbinding. Head out to Tubi, and you can watch it for free. Let us know what you think, too. Leave a comment. We're on the road right now. We'll be back in November. But if you miss us, we are recording weekly episodes of the Museum Mailbag podcast for members of the museum. If you're not a member, now's a great time to join. Go to patreon.com/paramuseum, and you'll still hear us in your ear holes every single week until we're back from tour. And the second half of Haunted Objects Podcast Season 2 will continue in November. We'll see you then. Hope you enjoyed the special.
Bye.
The Haunted Objects Podcast is hosted by Greg and Dana Newkirk, produced by Connor J. Randall, with cinematography and editing by Karl Pfeiffer, and features exclusive artifacts from the Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. To learn more about the artifacts featured in this episode, take part in live interactive experiments, and enjoy exclusive Haunted Objects content, become a museum member at patreon.com/paramuseum. This has been a Planet Weird production for Spectrevision Radio.